A question that tons of people have been asking is whether or not Starfield is going to run on the Steam Deck, and we still don't have anything official from either Bethesda or Valve, but we do have some leaks that are leading me to think that we will be able to play that game on Valve's little handheld. You see, officially nobody said anything, but there were recently leaked patch notes for patch 1.7.23, I think. And in those patch notes, they talk about the fact that they're adding a keyboard or a virtual keyboard to the Steam Deck. What this tells me is that they're trying to go for a green verified checkmark. That's one of the things that you need to be able to do in order to get that checkmark. And if Bethesda is trying to check that box, that means that they're probably got the game running pretty okay. Now, it also has some stuff leaked in this document that says that the game is going to run on the ROG Ally as well as the Steam Deck, but because these things are well under the recommended system settings, your performance isn't going to be great. But I want to talk about how Valve can work with Bethesda in order to make the game run best on the Steam Deck. Dude, it's 93 degrees out. Why are you wearing pants? Oh, actually, they're really comfortable. It's almost like I'm wearing nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. I've actually got another pair right here. I think you're my size. Here, try them on. Ooh, these are comfortable. What are you doing? So stretchy. What's going on here? Well, I have no idea what he's doing. I'm doing the sponsor read for today's video. Rhone. Unless you have a certain body type, men's clothing either looks boxy, like you're swimming in it, or too tight, like you somehow squeezed into it. And that's mostly down to what it's made out of. Rhone's commuter collection is made out of comfortable, breathable, flexible fabrics, which just make you look better. The fabric provides breathability, flexibility that lets you get through the day while being comfortable, whether it's at work or 18 holes of golf. I was in the Army, and one of the things I hated about being in the Army was the fact that I had to constantly iron my uniforms. Rhone's fabrics don't need to be ironed because they are wrinkle resistant. The commuter collection can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. So head on over to Rhone.com/NerdNest, then add code NerdNest to checkout for 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you go to RHONE.com/NerdNest and use NerdNest at checkout. It's time to find your corner office comfort. And big thank you to Rhone for sponsoring this episode. I want to jump in real quick because the embargo just lifted on Starfield, and that means we've got a whole bunch of new information. Now, Bethesda did tell reviewers not to review the game on the Steam Deck because it is below the minimum specs and it was not going to be a good experience. But Touch Arcade spent about 12 hours playing the game on the Steam Deck, and here's what they had to say. Number one, when you boot up the game, there is a black screen where you have to touch the screen in order to get it to jump over that black screen. I'm sure that that's something that'll easily be fixed with a future Proton version. Number two, we also know that the menus are only in 16:9, even if the game is running 16:10. So that's another like hoop that you have to jump through or deal with. And the game kind of runs okay in some parts of it, but anytime you go to big cities, your best bet is to put all of the settings on low and turn on FSR, and even then you're only going to be getting about 20 frames per second. However, I still feel like the Steam Deck is going to be the best place to play Starfield if you're looking for a handheld PC experience. And I'm going to explain why later on in the video. I've actually already explained it, but that's in the future for you and it's in the past for me. I don't know, video editing is confusing. All right, let's move on. It looks like Valve is already trying to smooth the road in order to pave the way. That's what I wanted to say. It looks like Valve is already trying to pave the way to get the game running on the Steam Deck. They released a patch earlier today. Was it today or yesterday? I don't remember. I saw it today over at Gaming on Linux. Here's what the patch notes read. Fixed a GPU driver crash with an upcoming game. Now, there's a lot of games that could be, but I don't see Valve rolling out the red carpet for everybody else. It's definitely a big name game, or they wouldn't be pre-patching stuff in beta to try and make that happen. And the only game that has that much power behind it these days is Starfield. So I do think that this leads me to believe, at least, that we're definitely going to be seeing Valve trying to work with Bethesda in order to make those things better. Now, there's a few other patch notes that I want to go over since I've already got this open, so let's go ahead and check this out. This one came out on August 23rd. There's just a couple of things in there that I think are interesting. Number one, fixed a case where the Steam cloud saves could be synced due to a computer that did not have the game installed if the game was available for streaming from another PC. I had a couple people send this to me and say maybe this is why you were having trouble with your Baldur's Gate 3 save. I don't think that's the case. I think the case is that the Baldur's Gate 3 save files are so absolutely massive that just systems are having trouble uploading it. So just a real quick recap, if you are playing games on multiple systems like Baldur's Gate 3 and you're having trouble getting your cloud saves to sync, honestly, I don't think that there's a good solution other than just stop using cloud save and just stick to one device. I cannot tell you how many times I have had save data just disappear, or not necessarily disappear, but get trapped on a system, and now I can't play on other systems. So I've stopped using the cloud saves for that particular game, and I'm moving on from that. All right, so we've got Valve trying as hard as they can to get games like Starfield running on the Steam Deck. This is not the first time that we've seen them do this. We saw them do this with Elden Ring, and we've seen them do it a whole bunch of times after that. It's fantastic that Valve takes the time to make sure that the games that we want to play are playable on our system of choice. I don't see anybody else doing this. Yes, the game may run better on the ROG Ally. It might run better on the Lenovo Legion Go. It might run better on the Aya Neo Qun, I think is how it's pronounced. It might run better on all of those systems on launch day. But over time, I don't think any of those other like hardware manufacturers are putting in the grunt work that Valve is. And that's why the games always seem to run better on Valve's hardware over time. Yes, some of the bigger games might be a little janky at the beginning, at launch, but what Valve always does is they spend just a little bit of extra time paying those games extra special attention. And because they do that, we end up with a better experience, which is yet another reason why you shouldn't buy games on launch day, especially if you are a PC player. Not only do you get awesome sales down the road, but you also get a better experience once it's been patched. While we're on the topic of patches, I also want to talk about Baldur's Gate 3 just a little bit more. It seems we're about to get a big patch. In patch 2, it's going to have major performance improvements. This comes to us from Twitter, official from Larian Studios. Here's what they had to say. Patch 2 is around the corner. It features major performance improvements, many new tweaks and changes, and begins our journey at incorporating feedback into origin character epilogues, among other major things. Details coming soon. This is awesome. I love playing Baldur's Gate on my Steam Deck. I have only been playing it on my PC lately, but if I can get my save game to transfer over after patch 2 comes through, it might be my new favorite place to play. The control system on the Steam Deck is fantastic. It is my favorite way to play it because I have access to both a mouse and a keyboard, and I have access to a controller at the same time without using an actual mouse and keyboard. So that means when I'm doing things like just exploring the world, I'm using the controller, but when I'm using like inventory management, it's so much easier with a mouse. So I love the idea of playing this game on my Steam Deck, and if it's going to be performing even better than it already is, then that is music to my ears. Now, speaking of big AAA games, I want to talk about Elder Scrolls 6. It is ridiculous that I think it was over 5 years ago that they showed that logo for Elder Scrolls 6, making all of us think, holy cow, it's finally going to happen. They're going to stop remaking Skyrim and they're going to give us Elder Scrolls 6. Well, in that time, they've obviously been working on Starfield, and Elder Scrolls 6 kind of went on the back burner. Now, let's be honest, it was in pre-production at the time. Well, pre-production is now over. This is coming to us from Video Games 24/7, and here's what they have to say. Yes, there are people working on Elder Scrolls 6, but Starfield is what the studio has focused on. So no, at no point early are you going to hear about Elder Scrolls 6 for nothing. Starfield is our focus for now, and it's going to remain our priority for a while before we talk anything else. So it seems like obviously they're going to be supporting Starfield for the next bit, but they do have people working on Elder Scrolls 6, and it is done with pre-production and now actually in production. But it's still going to be years before we actually see Elder Scrolls 6 ever actually come out. And I don't think that Bethesda is going to be talking about it anytime soon. What's really weird to me is the idea that they unveiled this 5 years ago, that they were working on it. And I can't think of a good reason to do that other than to try and manipulate the stock market. Like, I'm sure that their stock went up as soon as they put that title card up at, I believe it was at E3. I can't remember because it was so long ago. And for them to have shown us nothing since then other than like Elder Scrolls Blades on your phone is kind of irritating. I have to admit that I've been paying much closer attention to this type of story than I ever did before I got my hands on a low power handheld PC. It has to do with NVIDIA's DLSS and AMD's FSR. Now, if you don't know what those are, I'm going to explain what they are. But if you do know what they are, don't skip ahead, stick around, and if I get anything wrong, let me know in the comments down below. Here's what they are. Essentially, they run games at lower resolution, and then they use AI to upscale that resolution in order to make it look like it was run at the higher resolution that your screen's at. So, for instance, I'm playing a game at 540p on my Steam Deck, and then I use FSR in order to upscale that 540p signal to an 800p signal on the screen, and it doesn't look like garbage. So hopefully I got that right. Now, I was really excited about FSR 3 until I read this article. This article kind of dashed my hopes about it, and I'm going to explain why in a second. So one thing that we do know about DLSS and FSR3 is that DLSS is kind of ahead of the pack when it comes to the competition between those two, and FSR3 is a little bit behind. And FSR3 is going to, I don't want to necessarily say leapfrog, but it might at least catch up to DLSS in terms of quality thanks to this new thing called frame generation. Frame generation, and maybe I'm going to get this wrong too, but think of it like you're playing a game and that game is running at 60 frames per second. And you're playing it on a 120 frames per second screen. Well, what frame generation can do is it can look at frame A and frame B, and then it can generate more frames without really costing the card much horsepower and input those frames between frame A and frame B in order to give you a higher frame rate. And that sounds fantastic, especially when you're talking about a low power device like the Steam Deck or ROG Ally or any of the other PC gaming handhelds. But here's the thing. It makes the gameplay look smoother, but it doesn't make the gameplay feel smoother, and I'm going to explain why that is, at least if I got this understood correctly. Here's how it works. When you are playing a game and you're playing at, say, 30 frames per second, well, you press a button, and the button press, the input from you, the player, is kind of tied to that frame, and then the game reacts to whatever it is that you've done. Hopefully that makes sense. So, frame A comes through, you press the button, that input is tied to frame A, the game gets frame A back and says, oh, okay, they pushed the button, I'm going to send back this output to show that I got their input. You know what I mean? All right, well, those frames that I have lettered, like A and B, those frames, those are generated by the game, and you can tie your inputs to those frames. But the frames that are generated through FSR3 that go between those frames, you can't tie your inputs to those frames. So if you're playing a game at 30 frames per second, you can use FSR3 to generate the frames that go between them, but you can't tie your inputs to those generated frames. They will still be tied to frames A or frame B, and what that means is that the game will look smoother, but it won't feel smoother. So it might look like it's playing at 60 frames per second, which is great, but it'll feel like it's playing at 30 frames per second. Now, depending on what kind of game that you're playing, that might not matter. Like if you're playing a turn-based game like Baldur's Gate 3 or whatever, and you're able to play that game at 60 frames per second, but it feels like 30 frames per second, then who cares, because it's turn-based. But if you're playing like a fast-paced shooter like Apex Legends or Doom 2016 or Doom Eternal, then it's not going to work out so well for you. So I was really excited about that particular tech, but it looks like it's not going to be super useful on things like the Steam Deck, because basically you're going to want your game to be able to maintain 60 frames per second even without the frame generation. But let me know if I got any of that wrong, because it's still kind of weird to me, and I'll link the article below so you guys can check it out for yourselves. All right, real quick, I'm going to wrap up the rest of this video with a lightning round. We're going to start off with the prices of the Aya Neo Kun. The early bird prices are like $1,000 for the Aya Neo Kun. If you don't know what that is, it's like the big chonky boy. It's got 2 trackpads on the bottom, an 8.4-inch screen. I believe it has similar power to the ROG Ally, but the prices, early bird prices are, I think is $900? No, $999. I remember now. The early bird prices are $999, which means if you don't get it early bird, it's going to be even more than that. And I just can't see that thing even holding a candle to the Steam Deck or ROG Ally, because it's just way too expensive. Speaking of too expensive, the PlayStation Plus is getting a price hike. If you do the yearly plan, and you should do the yearly plan, it is going up by $30 per year.
Hey everybody, editor here. I was in the middle of editing this video when I realized that that guy that you were just listening to a second ago, he's bad at math. So let's just really quickly make sure that we get the prices accurate here. Otherwise, there's going to be 100 comments down below telling me, hey, Bill, learn to math. So first off, PS Plus Essential, that's like their lowest tier right now. Currently, that costs $59.99, and the new price for that is going to be $79.99. PS Plus Extra, which is currently $99.99, that is going up to $134.99. And then PS Plus Premium, which is the one that I'm on, and the one that my son's on, that one is $120.99, and that's going up to $159.99. So those prices are really, really irritating, because Sony just was bragging. I saw this on Threads from Scott Johnson. He posted, hey everybody, we just had a record-breaking year for profits, so now for no particular reason, let's raise the price of this subscription fee, which is really irritating to me. Now, it should be noted that Sony's just doing what Microsoft has already done, and I feel like this is the frog getting boiled in the water, and I wonder how long that people are going to kind of put up with this. I mean, we've already seen subscription fatigue when it comes to TV and movies and that kind of thing. Are we going to start seeing that play out in the console space, especially from people like me who have all of the consoles? And paying all this money for all these different systems is really irritating. And there's going to be people who say, well, Bill, you don't have to pay for that. And you're absolutely right. I don't. But I do think it's a good value until they keep raising the price over and over and over again. Anyway, let's get back to that other guy.
And finally, we've got a Super Mario Wonder Direct happening tomorrow as I record this. By the time I get this edited and uploaded, it will probably have already happened, so I'll know what happened, but I won't have time to record information for you guys. But let me know in the comments down below what you think of the Super Mario Wonder Direct. Personally, I am really hyped for that game, and I cannot wait to see what Nintendo is doing with this, because it feels like the first side-scrolling 2D Mario that we've had in a really long time that has felt different. Because ever since the new Super Mario Brothers games have come out, all of the other side-scrolling Marios have felt like a carbon copy, with the exception of I can't remember the one where you make your own levels. Mario Maker, there we go. With the exception of Mario Maker, everything else has just felt like a rubber stamp. So I'm really excited to see what Nintendo is doing with Super Mario Wonder. And that's going to do it for this episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, you're probably going to enjoy this video right here from the Nerd Nest. I'm Bill. Stay rad, everybody.